Thank you for inviting me around. I'm not a stranger to you. I belong to the same batch. But I expected few more, you know. So kakaunti lang pala yung sumagot doon sa invitation, you know. And so, Gary, I want to solve your problem. Please do not even think of giving me a stipend anymore. It's a pleasure to be here and to be given the opportunity to share some thoughts to you on the topic roadmap for the second half of life's journey. Subtitled Soaring Higher with Meaning and Purpose. You know, to get here, I had to use Waze. Kayo ba Waze users din?
Yes.
Okay. It's very useful, di ba? If you have Waze in your smartphone and you want it to give you the best and quickest route for your journey, you know that the first thing that you need to do is to enter in the search engine your destination. How can it even propose a route if Waze doesn't know your destination? We want a roadmap for the second half of life's journey. Well, I suppose it will have to begin by asking the question, where are we going to anyway? Parang kanta yun ni Diana Ross, di ba? Sumikat yan during our generation. Do you know where you're going to? Do you like the things that life is showing you? Where are you going to? Do you know? I would like to propose that this is, you know, the very first thing that we have to figure out before we can design a route for the second half of our journey. Lahat naman tayo, we were mentored by the great Jesuits of Ateneo, who have taught us that their master, Jesus, is the way, the truth, and the life. That's from John chapter 14, verse 6. And I hope you do not find it too irreverent if I paraphrase that to Jesus is the ways, the truth, and the life. The route that he recommends has as a default destination home. The default destination is home. Meaning God. Home is God. In short, we're always homeward bound. Earth is just a temporary sojourn. We have been taught this by our Jesuit mentors. The destination for the journey is heaven. And earth is a temporary sojourn. Madalas kong marinig si Stephen Covey kay Conrad, paborito. And if heaven is the end, following Stephen Covey's first habit for highly, is it the first? First habit for highly effective people is to begin with the end in mind. Tama ba?
Second.
It is the second. Okay, it's the second. So, that we should have begun with that end in mind. You don't try to figure out the end only by the end of the journey, but already from the start. Well, ang problema lang natin, in general, is because we live in this world, and this world is so good at offering us endless choices, may short-term, medium-term, long-term goals. Well, we often forget to even bother to figure out for ourselves what our ultimate goal is. At the end of your itinerary, if you are, again, a Waze user, Waze will announce to you, you have arrived at your destination. You have arrived at your destination. And yet you know that you're staying in this so-called destination for just a limited amount of time. Yun ang sinabi ng Waze sa akin nung dumating ako sa Liberty Center. You have arrived at your destination. Yeah, but this is just a destination for a few hours for me. Soon, I hit the road again for another destination. May kasal ako sa pagkatapos nito. And then, after the wedding, in Santo Domingo, I returned home to Caloocan. Caloocan, the bishop's residence there, is now home to me after I was transferred from Pampanga, where I used to be auxiliary bishop. Now I'm no longer connected to Pampanga. I am the bishop of Caloocan, Malabon, and Navotas. The Malabon and Navotas are included to the ecclesiastical jurisdiction called Diocese of Caloocan. So, I noticed that in ways, naging default yung address San Roque Cathedral in Mabini as home. Kaya hindi ko na kailangan i-enter sa Waze at each time I go home. Meron siyang naka-default dahil alam ng Waze, doon ako madalas umuwi. So, naka-default siya doon sa home. How clever this application to put on default your home. Because it knows that that's the place you keep going back to, it will put it on defaults. And so, you see, heaven cannot possibly be your default destination if you have not been there yet. You're supposed to have been there if you're going there. I know you're wondering what I mean. But you cannot call heaven your home if you're going there only for the first time at the end of your journey. You'll have a big problem there. Because that will give you an idea what hell is about. Hell is to be in heaven and feel like a stranger because you're unfamiliar with it. Hell is to be in heaven and not feel at home in it. You know, one time sabi ko sa homily ko, I have good news and bad news for you. First, the good news. We're all going to heaven. Wow, palakpakan sila. And now the bad news. We're not all going to feel at home in heaven. Of course, you will not feel at home in a place you're unfamiliar to, or in a state you're totally unfamiliar to. You feel alienated. So what do I mean about heaven as the default destination? Well, I get that from Jesus. We're mentored by Jesuits who follow no other example than that of their master and general, who is Jesus. For Jesus, heaven must begin already on earth. Heaven is not something we aspire for only in the afterlife. There is no afterlife to hope for if we have not aspired to live heaven on earth. He said this very clearly in what I call his vision and mission statement. Usually, napapataas ang kilay ng mga tao pag sabihin kong may vision mission statement si Jesus. Yes. Unfortunately, we've gotten so used to calling it a prayer to be recited. No, what you call the Lord's Prayer is the vision and mission statement of Jesus in a nutshell. In all our earthly endeavors, Jesus teaches us three things. One, to hallow God's name. Two, to let God's kingdom come. And three, to let God's will be done. Yan ang preoccupation niya. Now tell me, where are you supposed to do all of that? On earth as it is in heaven. The business of Jesus is not heaven, but earth. He's proclaiming a God who got involved with earth. That's why He became incarnate. He became one of us. God who is serious with our history, who is not just watching up there in heaven. Alam niyo ba yung kantang God is watching us? You know, I hate that song. You know, it gives the impression that God is just sitting up there in heaven watching us from a distance, wagging His finger, saying, so be good for goodness sake. Parang Santa Claus is coming to town. I remember many years ago when I was doing my studies in Belgium, I had a friend from Paris who sent me a postcard. And on the postcard, there was a little note, a quotation from the great French thinker, philosopher, and poet called Jacques Prévert. And it immediately caught my attention because on the postcard was a paraphrasing of the Our Father in French. In French, Our Father is Notre Père. And it says in French, Notre Père qui es aux cieux, restez-y. Et nous, nous resterons ici sur la terre où il est quand même parfois si joli. In English, it would translate as, Our Father who art in heaven, stay there in your heaven. Mas masakit sa Tagalog eh. Ama namin, sumasalangit ka, tiyan ka na lang sa langit mo. At kami, dito na lang kami sa lupa. Bahala na kami sa buhay namin. It's an angry prayer. It's a prayer written by an agnostic. May hugot, kumbaga. Maraming tao dito sa mundo may hugot. Kahit na presidente natin, may hugot din sa kanila. May hugot, no? Parang, kasi, you know, I think yung prayer na yon is really presupposing the wrong concept of God. God who is just up there, comfortably watching us in heaven. And that is why you have people lamenting when they go through difficult times. Where are you, God? Do you even care? Are you just up there watching us, torturing us here on earth? No. Well, there is a second half to the Our Father. A second set of three things that we must do to live life on earth as it is in heaven. We have to always struggle to find our daily bread. Not just the bread that will fill up our stomachs, but our spiritual nourishment, which in the scriptures is the word of God. Man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. And you want to experience heaven on earth? Learn forgiveness. Learn, you have to have the humility to ask for forgiveness and also the humility to forgive. And finally, you have to learn to wrestle with temptation and evil one. Diyan magaling ang mga Jesuita. That's why they teach us the spiritual exercises. In this world now, there are two standards, the standard of Satan and the standard of Christ. The more important battles in life are not physical battles, but spiritual battles. So you have to learn to wrestle. You have to have good discernment. So, like Thomas, Saint Thomas, the doubting Thomas in the Gospel of Saint John, we would probably react to the Lord and say, Lord, we do not know where heaven is. How can we know the way? You remember that passage? We do not know where you're going. Do you know where you're going to? Jesus said heaven, but where is that? Where is heaven? How can we know the way? And the answer of Jesus to that is, like I said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Meaning, I am the way to heaven. I am the truth about heaven. I am the life of heaven. That's what Christian faith is supposed to be about. He taught us to begin heaven already here on earth. Don't even bother to get to heaven as destination if you didn't look for it on earth. That's uniquely Jesus. That's what distinguishes our faith. That's why your Jesuits are obsessed with Jesus. That's why they name themselves the Compañeros de Jesus. Yes, please.
So it's true when people say heaven and hell is just here.
No, I don't say just here. We know how to find them already here. It's an already but not yet,
Second question.
Yes.
But I still believe that there is heaven, eternal happiness.
Oh, definitely. I'm not canceling that out. It's like the itinerary begins here. Okay? You have to be familiar with heaven. Okay, let me continue.
I understand.
Yes. Jesus taught us to begin heaven already here on earth by following only one commandment, which is love, because God is love. Where there is love,
First commandment.
there is God already. And then He says the first commandment is love God above all and love your neighbor as yourself. They're supposed to be connected to each other. Ang bait ni Jesus, he summarized the 10 commandments into two. The two loves, the vertical and the horizontal. The vertical love is love of God above all. And the horizontal love is love of neighbor as oneself. And later on, he summed them up into just one commandment. In John chapter 15, he says, my commandment to you is this, love one another as I have loved you. Very good. You know the qualification. Because sometimes when I ask people, what's the only commandment of Jesus, and they say, love one another. That's not true. That's not true. We all know how to love one another, but we don't know how to love one another as we have been loved by God in Jesus Christ. That's what it means to be a Christian. To be a Christian is to learn to love like God, who teaches us what that love means in Jesus Christ. So He will make sure that we will get to our destination if we have Jesus as our travel companion. That destination, that eternal life that you're talking about. Because life here in this world is not eternal. It's passing. We're only passing. So we still have, a fuller destination, but the itinerary is set already here on earth.
So it's true that there is really heaven and hell.
There is. The founder of the Jesuits, Ignatius of Loyola, was a soldier who was bent on pursuing worldly power and greatness. Yun nga, short-term. Ang tawag ko, short-term goals. At marami dito sa mundo na nahuhumaling sa mga short-term goals. Sometimes medium-term, sometimes long-term. Not a single one of them is the ultimate goal. How can this be ultimate goal when you're living this world? Diba? Ano bang bibit-bitin natin sa kabilang buhay? Wala naman. Well, he was preoccupied with power and greatness until he was struck by a cannonball and came to his senses. Kung minsan kailangan tayong batukan ng Panginoon just to get to our senses. And while he was convalescing in a hospital, he was given a book on the life of Christ. Not exactly the whole Bible, just some kind of a summary of the life of Christ. And he came across the biblical passage that's very popular. You all know that. What does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his soul? Para saan? What is it all for? It was then that he started pursuing his ultimate goal by following Jesus as his travel companion. I have met quite a few people who have asked basically the same question that confronted Ignatius, but in different ways. Questions like, wait a minute, what am I saving all this money for? What am I accumulating all these properties for? Para saan? Will there also come a time when my own children will sue each other to court over properties? You know how often that happens. Over properties that I've left for them, that I've worked hard for, and then I'll just end up turning in my grave. So I don't know why we have to deliver it all on a silver platter for our kids when we work very hard ourselves. Yung minsan, they will not strive hard anymore because they have it all on a silver platter. You built houses for them and left properties for them, etc. But you don't realize what you deprive them of, the capacity to strive on their own. Kung minsan, magulang din ang sumisira sa buhay ng mga anak nila.
I think there should be a balance.
Of course. I think this is a kind of question that people like us in the third quarter of life are bound to ask. What is it all for? Let me share a little story, and I hope you don't mind that I share a very personal story. And the story is about my father, tatay. Okay. In 1979, a few months before my father died, he sent me a letter. It was his last will and testament. I was in second year theology at the San Jose Seminary when I received his letter. You were not with me in theology anymore, Panra.
Yeah, the first year lang.
The first year lang. So my father was still alive then. Second year, my father died. Somebody must have mailed the letter for my dad. In the envelope, there were 4 pages of handwritten notes inscribed carefully by a trembling hand on a lined pieces of yellow pad paper.
Wow.
The kind he used for drafting his legal memoranda when he was still working at the City Fiscal's office in Manila City Hall. It was composed entirely in Kapampangan, his heart language. The letter opened this way. My dearest Ambo, I know it will not take much longer before I pass on. The doctors have told me so. I just thought that before I go, I should write down a few of the things I want you, your siblings, and your mother to know. I'm not writing to entrust properties or money to anybody. You know that I do not really have very much. I was never interested in acquiring wealth. You, my children, have always been my wealth. I only wanted to make sure you acquired good education, good breeding, proper values and principles in life. No one can steal that from you. I want you to be aware that life is short. Do not waste it. It is a gift. To live it meaningfully, you have to make sure you don't just live it for yourself. I lived mine for you, and for whomever I could be useful to. If only for that, I know I did not live my life in vain. I went on reading, and he proceeded to list down the names of all his 13 children.
Oh.
7 boys, 6 girls. Pang-sampu pa lang ako, panganay si Randy David. I'm number 10. Yes. My brother, my eldest brother. Yeah. So anak niya si Cara. Anak ni Randy. So, pamangkin ko si Cara.
Anak ni Cara David.
Yeah. Tatay ni Cara si Randy David. That's it.
Magaling si Randy David. I agree. Meron kaming mutual admiration society. And our youngest, nag-iwan siya ng habilin sa bawat anak niya down to the youngest, whose nickname is Goli, short for Goliath, because his real name is David David. Remember Goliath, David's Philistine enemy in the Bible. And so, my dad wrote a paragraph for each one of us, expressing what we meant for him, and what he appreciated most about each one of us, what the future had in store for us. He asked my elder brothers and sisters to help our mother look after the younger ones among us, to make sure that we all finished college, that none of us would be left out. My dad reserved the longest part, a full page, for my mother. He said, most of all, I want you, my children, to know that I owe much of what I have become now to your mother. How she managed to give birth to all of you at home. At home, assisted only by a midwife. How she breastfed all of you, clothed you, tutored you, and raised all 13 of you into decent human beings is beyond me, he said. And she also had my needs to look after, on top of managing a huge household with no housemaid. Perhaps because she survived the Japanese occupation and saw her own family through that nightmare of the Second World War, nothing seemed difficult to her. Sometimes I myself was tempted to give up, but one look at your mother, one gaze of love for her, one smile of affection was enough to keep me going despite all the odds. I know that I sometimes also made life difficult for her, especially when I made demands that were beyond her human powers. And yet she never gave up on me. I want you always to be grateful to God that you have her genes in you. The last paragraph contained an instruction. My dad said, after reading this letter, I ask you to please seal it again and keep it in some safe corner of your drawer or your closet. Take it out again only after I've been buried already. Give it to your Kuya Randy and ask him to read it to the rest of your siblings and in the presence of your mother. I did my task. Promptly after my father died and was buried, that was in 1980. Where were you in 1980? That's 2 years after our graduation. So in 1980, so that day we were on our way home from the Catholic cemetery in Betis, Guago, Pampanga. Then I whispered to Kuya Randy and said, Kuya, about a few months ago, Father Tatay sent me a letter and instructed me to turn it over to you when he's passed away already. Kuya Randy looked at me with surprise and said, a letter? What letter? I did not bother to answer him anymore. I just took it out of my shirt pocket and handed it to him. The letter reading was a tearful session from beginning to end. Kuya Randy read it haltingly, also because it was written in our native Kapampangan. Sometimes my Kuya stammered and repeated a word or phrase to make sure he got it well. But he gave the reading the tone of intimacy that it deserved. I could sense that he was also holding back his tears so that he could read it well. He heaved a deep sigh and cleared his throat, perhaps to prevent his voice from breaking, before he finally read the part about my mother. The letter closed with the words, in Kapampangan, "Ing malugod ke kayo, Tatang. Lovingly yours, your dad." My brother handed back the letter to me after reading it. He said, Ambo, please keep this letter for the rest of us, and please have it photocopied and give each one of us a copy of it. After fulfilling my assignment, I handed the original to my mother, who kept it in my father's file cabinet in Pampanga. In 1995, a big flood was triggered by an avalanche of volcanic mud after the eruption of Mount Pinatubo. It buried half of our neighboring town of Bacolod and inundated Betis, my hometown. My father's file cabinet floated with the flood water. All the files in it were soaked in mud water along with my father's last will and testament. My sadness over the loss of such a precious document was assuaged only by the thought that luckily we had 13 other photocopies of the said letter. I had brought that letter with me during the 5 years that I was in Europe doing my doctoral studies, not in Rome, but in Belgium. I had opened it many times and read its contents, especially whenever I felt like I needed to conjure my father's spirit, such as when I was homesick, or down, or discouraged. I had brought the letter back home with me after I finished my studies. After learning that my father's files had been destroyed by the flood, I quickly searched all my old boxes in the seminary and looked for my own personal files. The one that I desperately looked for, at least I knew what I was looking for, was a brown envelope with some old photos of my Belgium days, where I was certain I enclosed my father's photocopied last will and testament. I almost jumped with joy when I found it at last. It was in an envelope that had faded from bright green to ochre yellow, the patina of time. I was not prepared for a heartbreaking surprise. The photocopy of my father's letter, which back then was done on thermal paper, remember? It Yung Xerox, papaserox tayo ng mga handouts sa Ateneo, nabubura. It had almost totally faded away.
Oh my gosh.
There was nothing anymore but a hint of some vague handwriting that could hardly be read. I checked with my other siblings who found basically the same thing in their own copies. My father's words had disappeared. Like a writing on the sandy shore washed away by the sea. You know what we did? From then on, whenever we came together for family occasions, especially All Saints' Day, we remind ourselves of that letter. And we try to retrieve Tatay's words from some dusty corner of our memories. How clever of our father to have thought of writing that letter for us at the short-lived final quarter of his life. I remember many years before he died, something had happened that radically changed my father's demeanor for the rest of his life. One day he came home half-dazed with his clothes soiled and torn, and his elbows and knees were badly bruised and bleeding. As soon as he stepped into the house, he went straight to the kitchen where my mother was and embraced her tightly and started sobbing like a child. "What happened to you?" My mother asked. He said, "I got sideswiped by a bus and fell and almost got run over by the next jeepney behind it. If I had not rolled over to the road shoulder." He was shaken. Now I wonder if you too have been confronted by your own sense of mortality. It could have been occasioned by a serious health crisis. Sa edad natin, kakaspil na tayo. At isa sa palatandaan ang topic of conversation. Diabetes, blood pressure, heart condition, etc. Yeah, sometimes, our sense of mortality comes into our consciousness when we have to deal with a serious health crisis or a close brush with death that makes you suddenly realize how vulnerable you are. You call this the third quarter of life, sort of presupposing that there is still a fourth quarter. Wow, you're optimistic. Because to be honest about it, for some of us, this could already be our final quarter. My own dad died when he was just 59 years old.
Very young.
Yes. I do not think I need to belabor the point to convince you how short life is. Psalm 90 says, "Our life is over like a sigh. The sum of our years is 70 or 80 if we are strong."
Oh.
So you have to redefine what you mean by a quarter, man.
Some 90? It's really some 90.
Years per quarter.
You see, in the consciousness of the Israelite people, this is the biblical times, the longest is 80. Talagang people had a shorter span of life before. Now, luckily, thanks to modern medical technology, a good number of people are able to complete the fourth quarter of life.
Yes.
But you have to check the statistics, how many. We all know that long life. Okay, do you want to live a long life? That depends. Long life is not just about the length of years. I hope you agree with me if I say it's more about quality, about happiness, about living with a sense of meaning and purpose. And when I look back, well, I'd say my father had lived a life that was well worth it. He had lived a full life with a sense of meaning and purpose. Every moment of the 59 years that God had gifted him with. Another story, I remember my brother's mother-in-law Her name is Leticia Rojas Constantino, the wife of Renato Constantino, the author of The Philippines, A Past Revisited, which was one of our textbooks for Philippine history. I remember how she and her husband spent the second half of their life after their children became independent and started building their own families and homes. And I'm sure you're mostly in that stage. Yeah? You built a big house that's suddenly empty. You built several rooms, but after a couple of decades, they finish school, they find a job, they fall in love, they settle down, they get married, and suddenly you're alone. You are at least with your spouse, if your spouse is still around. So, Leticia Rojas Constantino went on living to the full even after she lost her husband. Her husband died at 72. From a full-time mother and wife, she shifted to being a full-time proofreader and editor of her husband's scholarly writings and enjoyed every bit of it. The publications of Renato Constantino are to be attributed not to Renato but to Leticia. After her husband died, she returned to playing the piano, learning to do bonsai and ikebana, dancing the tango with her grandsons. She traveled abroad with her grandchildren, allowed herself to be mentored by them in the use of the computer. They even taught her how to use an iPad, an iPhone at the age of 85. To motivate her grandchildren to bond with her regularly, she made sure she had their favorite dishes prepared whenever they visited her. She put up a library and a playpen in her house just for them. She died last year with a smile on her face at the age of 98. Before I gave my homily for her funeral, I asked the grandchildren to share what they thought were the best lessons they learned from their grandmother. And there I was. Instead of being the preacher, I was the listener. And I was taking notes while they were sharing their stories. And then I concluded with a summary. So ang homily ko summary na lang. Summarizing the lessons that they had learned. And here they are. Lesson number 1. Be joyful. Aspire not just to be happy, but to be joyful. You know, in the English vocabulary, we make a distinction between happiness and joy. That's why, you know, Pope Francis entitled his apostolic exhortation on family and life as Amoris Laetitia. And Laetitia means joy, the joy of love. And the wife of Constantino, her name is Leticia. Her name meant joy. Don't allow worries to weigh you down. People who are miserable make others miserable. Second lesson, find joy in loving, in caring, in doing what you can do best. Never be mediocre. We learned that from our Jesuit mentors, didn't we? Magis. Quantum satis. Yun na bang abot ng makakaya mo? We will not surrender to the thought of, pwede na yan. Yung ganun ba? If you do something, you know, give it your best shot. You might as well not do it if you don't put your heart in it. Third lesson, find joy in loving, in caring, and in doing what you can do best. Never be mediocre. Find joy in helping others find their joy too. Okay? Meaning, there is joy in aspiring to be happy, but there is greater joy in making others happy. Fourth lesson, do not take yourself too seriously. Be humble. You know. Fifth lesson, travel light. Life is a journey. Most of the baggages that weigh us down are spiritual.
Yes.
Like resentments and negative memories. They weigh us down. Sixth lesson, Be selective with your memory. Look back in a positive sense of being grateful. Alam natin yung kasabihan, ang hindi daw lumingon sa pinanggalingan ay hindi makararating sa You can, you can use the same thought and make it negative. Ang lingon ng lingon sa pinanggalingan, hindi rin makakarating sa paruroonan. Do you remember that biblical story about the nephew of Abraham, whose name was Lot? Sabi ng angel, when God was punishing Sodom and Gomorrah, do not turn back. Do not look back.
And yet she did.
Just walk on, run for your lives. Don't look back. But she looked back and turned into a pillar of salt. See? You get petrified, if you look back in the negative sense of it. Yeah, there is a negative sense of getting stuck in the past. Some people make mistakes and sometimes they just allow themselves to sink into it like parang kumunoy ba. Lesson number 7, learn to say goodbye when you have to. It's part of growing in wisdom. Learn to let go. Learn detachment. Detachment.
Learn to break up.
Sayang, nung mga estudyante tayo, wala pang masyadong usap about multiple intelligences. Howard Gardner, that well-known specialist in education, discovered what he called multiple intelligences. Ewan ko lang kung sabi natin he discovered it because I see the scriptures, I see this idea in all scriptures. There was one kind, however, that he failed to recognize. One kind of intelligence. I call it spiritual intelligence. And I hope this is what I'm sharing with you this morning. I call it the foundation of all other intelligences. Tinuruan tayo maging intelligent about many things, but have we also developed spiritual intelligence? I think the Jesuits tried their best to impart it on us as well. Kaya nga tayo sa Ateneo, sometimes when we share with other people, and they learn that we had so many theology units and so many philosophy units, whatever your course was, di ba, lahat tayo, kahit anong course, magkakaklase tayo sa mga philosophy and theology courses. What did we take all that theology and philosophy for? Kung management ka, yung gano'n, IT ka or whatever, no? But it's like that in Ateneo. We develop also another form of intelligence, spiritual. It is what Jesus meant when he said, when he exhorted his disciples to learn to interpret the signs of the times. Kasi kung minsan, things just happen to us and we fail to make sense of them. That's spiritual intelligence. Spiritual intelligence is to know how to make sense. Hindi sapat yung marinig natin ang salaysay ng mga bagay-bagay. Mahalaga yung saysay. Saysay means kahulugan. Kahulugan. Yeah. People often look for meanings. Naghahanap tayo ng kahulugan sa buhay. As if meaning would fall from heaven straight on our laps. Well, unfortunately, meaning is made, not found. You don't find sense, you make it. But it requires discipline. It requires lots of serious reflection. Yan ang tinuro sa atin ni Roque Ferrios. Si Father Roque Ferrios naging kontrabida sa buhay ng maraming Ateneos. Mag-isip ka. Ulit-ulitin mo. Mag-isip ka. Ang hirap sa maraming Atenista na hindi masyado marunong ng Tagalog. Kapag nagtataglish na tayo, minsan namumura tayo. Utak tamad yan. Mag-isip ka. May kataga para dyan. May salita para dyan. Ganyan siya. Mag-isip ka. And the first book that he published was entitled Magpakatao. Maghagilap ng kahulugan sa buhay. Yun ang magpakatao. Maghanap ng layuning higit pa sa atin. Hindi ba natin narinig, si Socrates sa kanya, an unexamined life is not worth living. Ang buhay na hindi pinagninilayan o sinusuri, walang kwenta. So hindi naman pala lahat ng taong mukhang buhay talagang buhay. Yung iba, mukha lang. Kaya tayo tinuruang magpakatao. Ang hindi marunong magpakatao, nagpapakahayop. Hindi lahat ng mukhang tao talagang tao. Ang iba mukha lang. Kung di tayo naturuan, magugaling tao, magpahalaga ng kapwa. Kung buhay natin umiikot lang sa sarili natin, baka mukhang tao tayo pero galing hayop, di ba? Kaya nga ayaw nating matawag na hayop ka. Di ba? Insulto yun. Insultong sabihin hayop ka. May mga tao ko. Tao. Sasabihin ka tuloy na matatanda. Tao ko pala, di magpakatao. Hindi pala automatic ang pagpapakatao. There is one important aspect of Jesuit spirituality which I heard very often from our Jesuit professors, especially during retreats. They call it holy indifference. Narinig niyo ba yan? Would you remember that? Holy indifference. Masyado na kasing matagal, baka wala na sa memory natin. Holy indifference. It's not exactly the same as fatalism or the simple come what may attitude. It has to do with proper grounding in the true absolutes of life that makes it easier for us to deal with passing things. Things of relative worth. Things of relative worth. Yan ang madalas ituro ng Jesuita sa atin. Enjoy life. But be aware of its limited purpose. Enjoy life for its own worth, but always with eternity in sight. What is that in the light of eternity? Ecclesiastes chapter 3 captures it very well. There is a time for everything and a time for every season under the heavens. Do you remember that? A time to be born and a time to die, a time for this and a time for that. Di ba? It's a song. Yeah. Yung to everything, turn. There is a season, turn. May panahon para sa lahat ng bagay. Tama si Lola ni Dora. May tamang panahon. Kaya malakas ang dating. May tamang panahon. It is important in life to know not just what time it is. Kasi when you say what time is it, that's about measured or calculated time. The Greeks would call that chronos. At doon ang galing salitang chronological. But there is another vocabulary for time in Greek. It's kairos. It's not about measured or calculated time. It's about quality time. Knowing proper timing. Mas magandang translation, not time but timing. Kairos, chronos is time, kairos is timing. To be positively indifferent for any eventuality. The Greeks call it kairos, as I said. Never to prefer good health to sickness. Even if, time plastic, siyempre mas gusto natin healthy tayo kaysa may sakit. But can we help it if we get sick? What's the big deal if we get sick? Talaga naman magkakasakit tayo. Never to prefer wealth to poverty. Of course we prefer wealth. But there are difficult times as well. Never to prefer life to death. Of course we'd rather be alive. But we're going to die. That's a fact of life. Now, each one will have its own time and season. That's holy indifference for the Jesuits. As you probably have noticed already, the lessons that I have been sharing are not mine exclusively. I just drew most of them from people close to me. My final point, as proposed by the steering committee, will zero in on some practical tips on how to live the second half of life through personal reinvention and through mission and involvement in church ministry and social advocacies. So the first half of what follows would be mainly tips for personal reinvention, and the second half of life The second part would be mission and involvement in church ministry and social advocacies. Here they are. I call them tips, practical tips on how to live a meaningful second half of life. Alright. First tip, develop new interests like cooking, farming, or simple gardening, painting, singing, dancing, writing poetry, or short stories, whatever. Second tip, learning new things. Learn new things, acquiring new skills, reading new books, preferably stories. I assure you that they good also for your memory exercise. Kasi our brain cells, if we don't use them, they liquefy. They cannot be revived. Write a journal, you know. Thirdly, relearning your faith. You can relearn your faith by rereading the Bible, joining a Bible study group, or getting into a refresher's course in theology and philosophy, now that you might have more time. Fourthly, renewing old friendships like you're doing now. Attending reunions, staying a bit longer in wedding receptions or wakes, and other family gatherings. The fourth tip. Fifth, finding or entering into new relationships. Finding new friends, perhaps on Facebook. But then even better, real life friends, not, you know, or even a late romance for widows and widowers. No? Sorry, I had to underscore for widows and widowers. Baka kasi mga bridges of Madison County. Sixth tip, create a photo album. Then it's about time, you know, you have accumulated a lot of photos. Don't just allow them to sit in your iPhone. Let them be printed out. Create hard copies, you know. Photo albums of family, travels, personal trivia, anything that can serve as conversation piece and anything that can enhance memory. Kasi kung minsan you invite friends, minsan sabi mo, ano pag-uusapan namin?
Wala.
You know, you can start with showing them photo albums, and before you know it, you're telling them the story of the family already.
Yes.
Seventh tip, build a family tree. You know, I recommend to you myheritage.com. That's a good application. Because you build your family tree and it will give you a tip on how to do it systematically. And involve all relatives in it. Collecting data when attending family gatherings. If you have myheritage.com, you send an invitation to a relative to complete the data. And then the data is completed. You know, we were able to trace up to 5 generations sa aming pamilya, thanks to the help of a lot of family members. And you know when it happens, yung sa mga burol sa patay, bigla makikita mo mga tiyahin, tiyuhin, ganyan, habang buhay pa sila. You know, habang buhay pa sila, they might pass away and then you don't get the data. Number 8. Now, the second half is about, you know, yung mission and so involvement in ministry and social advocacy. So, engage in a second career. I have met a lot of Ateneans who have made a second career of counseling or spiritual direction or even teaching. After being in the corporate world or getting involved in so many things, suddenly they're shifting to a new career. Have you ever heard of CEFAM, Center for Family Ministries? A lot of people there are second career people in the second half of life. Or anything that you wish you could do when you were younger, but never had the opportunity to. Number 9, share your thoughts. By giving thoughts, writing a blog, or books on topics that you're passionate about. You know, when I was assigned to Manila, you know, I began to suffer the Manila traffic. And I didn't know that it could be so stressful because I lived in Pampanga practically all my life, and there, traffic's relatively okay. And then, suddenly, I was assigned in Caloocan. My God, it was so stressful. So I really had to find a driver already. And even with a driver, I would still be stressed out. So the solution was my cell phone. I started telling stories on my cell phone and posting them on Facebook. And with that, I started publishing books. So we published a book entitled The Gospel of Mercy, according to Juan and Juana. We published that last year. And then the prequel, we don't call it a sequel, but a prequel. It should have been written before, but we wrote it later. It was some kind of an afterthought. It's going to be called The Gospel of Love, according to Juan and Juana, and we're launching it in July. Give talks, write a book, write a blog, or anything, topics that you are passionate about. Number 10, creating support groups for people with substance use disorder, addicts, alcoholics, gamblers. Kasi hazardous din ang gambling. Alam na natin na yun. It's as hazardous as substance, as shabu or alcohol. Maybe support groups of cancer survivors, etc. Getting involved in advocacies like good governance, environmental protection, ecological solid waste management, heritage conservation, campaigns against criminality and addictions, projects for people with disabilities, street children, victims of human trafficking, etc. The possibilities are endless. When I was assigned in Holy Rosary Parish in Angeles City, the first thing that caught my attention was the river. It was full of trash. And so, what I did was every Saturday morning, I would go down myself and start, picking up trash in the river. I was like Pied Piper, I was able to draw people. Before I knew it, schools were going there, mandated organizations, civic organizations, NGOs, even the police. In order to be able, I had no illusion of cleaning up that river by myself. And I just knew that I needed to make people aware of it. That's our problem is the environmental laws in this country are very good. They are among the best in the whole world. Ecological Solid Waste Management Act, Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act. They're the best in the world. We have the best environmental laws. The only problem is they're not being implemented. Did you know that dump sites are already illegal? But check out, there's not a single local government unit that is not maintaining a dumping sites. They're not following the law. We have the law, but we're not implementing them. Heritage conservation. I don't know what got into me, but my first passion when I returned from Belgium was to rebuild our ancestral home. Not rebuild, restore our ancestral home. And was able to involve the rest of my siblings in it. Because our ancestral home in Betis is more than 100 years old. And we did it. And we had it jacked up, by about 15 feet to be able to save it. It's all wood, with a nipa roof and kapis windows and a beautiful balconahe that's values third. It's not a bahay na bato. It's, a poor man's house that has lasted a century.
We were at Betis, the patch was there.
Yeah.
Your house was closed then.
Ay, sayang. Pedro David Street. That's our street, yeah. Our street was named after my dad. Not because he's a famous man, but because he loved to sweep the whole street. And he would wake us up very early in the morning and involve us in sweeping the street. And I was indignant. I said, Tatay naman, bakit kailangan walisin natin yung buong kalsada? Ba't di na lang yung tapat natin? Sabi nila, tapat ko, linis ko. Galit na galit siya doon sa tapat ko, linis ko. Sabi, hindi, bayan ko, linis ko. At paglabas na niya, ayun, pag nagwalis na siya, mahihiya yung mga kapitbahay. Maglalabasan din sila, magdadala din ng mga brooms, you know. And then the whole task would be done in just 10 minutes. After that, magpapakapi siya. And then build community. When he passed away, wala pang pangalan yung street namin. And then, nagbutuhan sila, unanimous decision, Pedro David Street. Not because he was sikat, but because he swept that street. Yeah, other advocacies like campaigns against criminality and addiction, budget for people with disabilities, street children, victims of human trafficking, etc. Number 12, put up a foundation. Maybe it's time to pay it forward. You know, 13 kami magkakapatid. I don't know when it began. It was, I think, after my mom passed away. Dahil lahat kami naging successful and became professionals. And we feel grateful because half of us were educated in public schools. Ako lang yung sinuwerteng maglaan sa Ateneo. Hindi ako mapapaaral sa Ateneo ng tatay ko. I remember nasa Ateneo ko, ang baba ng self-esteem ko kasi yung English ko, provincial English. You know? It was the great Doreen Fernandez who sort of built up my self-esteem, you know. I says the important thing is correct English. It doesn't have to have the Ateneo twang. You know. But yes, so the rest of my siblings, they studied in public schools and succeeded. So we put up a family corporation, family foundation, not for business. It's not stock, not profit. And we started getting involved in feeding programs, medical missions, and now scholarship. It's, you know, malit na bagay. We have about 35 scholars, you know, but our relationship with these 35 college scholars is very personal. We mentor them. They're part of our family, you know. It's like, yung charity, yes, begins at home, but it should not end at home. So, number 13, volunteering for church ministries. Yeah. This would go well with relearning your faith. Maybe volunteer as lectors. Minsan, magsisimba ka, tapos naiinis ka dun sa reader. You know, hindi mo maintindihan, yung problem niya. Ay, ganun pala eh, hindi mag-volunteer ka. You know? Lay Eucharistic ministers, you know, and I assure you, the advantage of being a lay Eucharistic minister is you sit up close. You sit there up close, you know. It's different when you sit there up close. Somehow, you listen, you know, more carefully to what's being proclaimed from there. Organizers of basic ecclesial communities, or even members of liturgical formation, social action, ministries in the parishes. And number 14, perhaps you can join renewal movements. There are lots of them. Couples for Christ, Brotherhood of Christian Businessmen and Professionals in the Philippines, charismatic groups, marriage encounters, name it. You know, there are many possible renewal movements to join. You know. Okay, let me end now. There is an endless list of possibilities for people with imagination. Sabi ni Albert Einstein, imagination is greater than knowledge. And I'd like to believe that when I studied in Ateneo, what Ateneo shaped in me was just, what Ateneo did for me was not just to impart knowledge, but to hone my imagination. Just with imagination, the task of learning is endless. The important thing is to rekindle that fire in your belly and in your bones that will make you wake up each day with excitement, with something to look forward to. And so let me end with that famous old saying that we are all familiar with, I shall pass this world but once. If there's anything that I can do, let me do it now. Let me not postpone it for another day, for I shall never pass this way again. Sa bokabularyo ni Chris Aquino, now na. Now na. Let's not postpone it for another day. Kailangan buhay. You want to do something, and you keep just wanting it, do it. Do it. Because by the time you might want to do it, wala nang time. So, the routes that Jesus will recommend will not always be pleasant. But rest assured of this, they will make you reach your destination. So, happy trip.